Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our RSIS webinar on Islamic civil society in Indonesia during Jokowi's second term. We are very honored today to be joined by several distinguished speakers. Each of them will speak about the current situation regarding Islamic civil society in Indonesia today. Let me introduce each of them. The first speaker is Kiai Haji Yahya Cholil Staquf from Nahdlatul Ulama, Indonesia's largest Islamic organization. The second speaker is Professor Dr. Abdul from Muhammadiyah, which is the Indonesia's second largest Islamic organization. And the last speaker is Dr. Edmund Landy from Universitas Nasional Jakarta, who will speak about Islamic conservative Islamist organizations in Indonesia today. An important factor in President Joko Widodo's successful re-election last year was his alliance with moderate civil society organizations, particularly with Nahdlatul Ulama. However, since Jokowi's second term began last year, political friction has developed between his administration as well as between his administration and NU and Muhammadiyah. These frictions had erupted for several reasons, including his decision to appoint a retired general as Minister of Religious Affairs, as well as the introduction of the Pancasila Ideological Guidance Bill, which has resurrected the age-old debate over the nation's official ideology, as well as, and lastly, there is also a controversy about the newly passed Omnibus law on manpower and job creation that has attracted some opposition, particularly from Nahdlatul Ulama activists. In this webinar, we invite these three speakers to discuss these issues and other ongoing development concerning the relationship between Islamic civil society organizations and the Jokowi administration. Kiai Staquf and Prof. Mukti will speak on the relationship between Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, while Dr. Lanti will speak regarding the security implications of growing Islamic conservatism in Indonesian society. In their presentations, the speakers will address the following questions. What are the sources of the ongoing tensions between the administration and NU and Muhammadiyah? How do they affect the long-term relationship between these organizations and the Jokowi administration? How does NU and Muhammadiyah deal with increasing competition from newer, more conservative Islamic organizations? And finally, what are the potential security implications of growing conservative Islamism in Indonesia during the rest of President Jokowi's second term, which still has 4 more years remaining? So first of all, let me introduce our first speaker, Gus Yahya. He is the Khatib A'am, or the General Secretary of the Dewan Syuriah Nahdlatul Ulama, and he will speak on Nahdlatul Ulama's perception during Jokowi's second term so far. Gus Yahya, you have about 15 minutes to speak, starting now.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pak Alex, Pak Mukti, Pak Irman, distinguished participants. Long-term settlement is something rare in Indonesian politics, not just with social organizations such as Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah and other NGOs. Even with political parties, long-term settlement is very rare. What we have usually, or basically, is an ongoing continuous negotiation. And repositioning is always a possibility in every issue raised in public discourse. let alone big issues such as what Pak Alex just mentioned. So again, long-term settlement is very rare unless you are part of the inner circle of the center of power or the palace. Look at Pak Prabowo, for example. He was the rival, the competitor of Pak Jokowi. But then they reached a settlement where Pak Prabowo accepted a position in Pak Jokowi's cabinet. And you can see that in the ongoing dynamics, things just changing and changing. Look at the relationship between Pak Jokowi, for example, with Nasdem or with PAN or PTIP, you know. So that goes also to Nahdlatul Ulama and I think also Muhammadiyah. So, and the negotiation usually is related to tend to be pragmatic, such as negotiation on some position in the administration, such as the minister in the cabinet and so forth. So what we see now is that there is a need to have a perception of alliance between Pak Jokowi and PTIP with Nahdlatul Ulama, because Nahdlatul Ulama has a very vast constituency, according to a survey. Actually, it's by the Al-Farah Institute. Almost 40% of Muslim population in Indonesia self-identifies themselves as followers of Nahdlatul Ulama. So, but Nahdlatul Ulama can only be effective in mobilizing its constituency, its followers, on symbolic issues, whether it is related to communal identity or related to some religious sanctioning, such as what is halal, what is haram, and so forth. But for issues, other non-religious issues, and issues that is not symbolic, not regarded as a symbolic issue to NU people, the capacity of the NU leadership to mobilize the followers is not that effective. From the survey again about the votes that President Jokowi got from NU people, only 58% of NU followers actually voted for Jokowi Ma'ruf Amin, while 42% of them voted for Prabowo. While you can see that almost all NU leadership were consolidated in support for Pak Jokowi Ma'ruf Amin. So this shows my point that on issues which are not regarded as symbolic or religious, the capacity of any leadership to mobilize its people, the followers, is not necessarily effective. But 58% of NU people is still significant. So political aspirants, people who needs political support, needs votes from the people, they will always see Nahdlatul Ulama people as very, very potential source of support. But then again, there's no long-term settlement. So what we are seeing now is like Jokowi administration has to negotiate over and over on various different issues with NU leadership. That's what happened. Now, regarding the problem of conservatism, if we think about conservatism, we need to be to define in a definite way what actually the thing that we have as concerns related to conservatism. It is about some religious rulings, such as what is halal and what is haram about foods, or is it related to the norms of marriage, or well, what issues are we concerned with related to conservatism? The way I see it, the most concerning issue related to conservatism is related to the issue of tolerance. We have concern that the more conservative a Muslim is, then there's a chance that the person will be more intolerant or will tend to be more intolerant. That's why we're talking about moderate Islam, which is like well, maybe not 100% Islam, maybe just be Muslim, but take just only 50% of it, something like that. No, because you don't want Muslim to be too conservative, that because we're afraid, they will be more intolerant. And tolerance actually related to the perception about how religion should function in public spaces. Now, if people want religion to have more domination in public spaces, then it will make them more intolerant to differences, whether it is differences on opinion about the said religion itself or with other religion. Now, so why then this is regarded as a concern or even a threat to us? And why it keeps, it keeps coming up into public discourse and in politics? It is because, the way I see it, is because there are indeed, actually, in fact, some elements within the religious teachings, some tenets in the teaching that encourage people to be more intolerant. For example, this is a problem that is a fact, something that is real, and we need to talk about this problem honestly. You see, for example, in the it is still an authoritative discourse, an authoritative position in Islamic discourse that non-Muslim should have different status and different rights in public spaces than Muslims. So actually, there are tenets within Islamic discourse which are considered to be the orthodoxy of Islam and still have a tremendous authority, which encourage Muslim to be, well, discriminative to non-Muslim. There are. I know that because this is my things. I've been studying Islam the whole of my life, so I know this for a fact. So as long as this kind of tenets is still there, then we will continue having this problem with.
Yahya, sorry, we only have 3 minutes left.
Okay, so that's why Nahdlatul Ulama, well, some people may say that the positioning of Nahdlatul Ulama of the aligning of Nahdlatul Ulama toward moderation, toward moderation is something that is pragmatic, but actually it's not. At least since Gus Dur, it's already become almost part of our symbolic communal identity of Nahdlatul Ulama. That, NU people would think that if you're not moderate, if you are leaning to those radical or extremist people, then you're not really NU. So, but still, we need to deal with this problematic discourse within Islamic teaching. That's why in 2019, we had this National Convention of our Ulamas, and we ruled a new position in Islamic jurisprudence on the issues of non-Muslim, the issue of Sharia, the issue of caliphate, and the issue of conflict involving a group of Muslims. We ruled that the category of non-Muslim or infidel or kafir is no longer relevant in the context of modern nation state. We ruled that caliphate is not a religious obligation for Muslims. We ruled that Sharia
1 more minute, Gus Yahya.
Is not to be contradicted with the national laws. Muslims must abide by national laws. And this obligation to abide by national laws is a Sharia obligation. So, whenever there is a conflict happen between group of Muslim and group of non-Muslim, Muslim should not get involved in the name of helping fellow Muslims, but the obligation is to struggle for peace. Those are the rulings that we did to change the discourse, to provide an alternative discourse from the problematic ones in the orthodoxy. That is how we think we should do to deal with the problem of conservatism, radicalism, extremism to the root of this problem.
Okay, Yahya, I think your time is up, unfortunately. So our next speaker is Dr. Abdul Mukti, who is the General Secretary of the Central Leadership Board of Muhammadiyah. He's a Muhammadiyah member since 1994 and was also the General Chairman of Pemuda Muhammadiyah, the organization's youth wing from 2002 and 2006. Pak Mukti is also sit in various board of dealing with interfaith dialogue both in Indonesia as well as overseas. So Pak Mukti, kami persilahkan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Alek. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. Distinguished speakers, Gus Yahya Cholil Staquf, and also Pak Dr. Edmund Landy, and I see here also Pak Leonard. First of all, let me extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to RSIS for the invitation and for the organization of this very prestigious webinar. And also my thanks to Alex, my good friend that always keep in touch and also update all information about Muhammadiyah and also about Indonesia. I just want to speak very briefly about Muhammadiyah and its relation with President Jokowi leadership at his second term, and I might not use 15 minutes. I might use for about 10 minutes. So
okay,
the rest
can pass.
Yeah, but I don't want to use all.
Of course.
First, of course, Muhammadiyah actually still very consistent with the position as civil society, or to be more explicit, is an Islamic civil society that promote a peaceful Islam, a moderate Islam, and also a modern Islam. And Muhammadiyah as civil society is very concerned with the three aspects within Indonesian society and also Indonesian state, that are democracy, meritocracy, good governance, and clean government. Of course, with this position, then Muhammadiyah position to any leadership in Indonesia, whether President Jokowi or President Yudhoyono and the previous President Bu Megawati, including Gus Dur, remain the same. Muhammadiyah consistent as civil society to stand as a loyal and critical organization or critical Muslim groups. Therefore, during the leadership of President Jokowi, and I think also the previous president, the majority of Muhammadiyah members did not vote for President Jokowi. I think we can see the statistic, and maybe RSIS also has the data on that. But while President Jokowi was elected, then Muhammadiyah, of course, accept political reality. And when so many people demonstrated and protested the election as being unfair and some other, let's say, problem dealing with the cheating and so on and so forth, Muhammadiyah keep promoting the importance of acceptance to the result of the election. And for those who are disappointed with the election, then please bring and, let's say, appeal to judicial court or Mahkamah Konstitusi. It is not the thing that indicates Muhammadiyah actually becoming so, for example, the opposition of the government, but it is actually the responsibility of Muhammadiyah to defend Indonesian democracy and also to the importance of meritocracy within the state affairs in Indonesia. The second, of course, when it's come to the appointment of cabinet by President Jokowi, Muhammadiyah also understand that the composition or the formation of cabinet is the prerogative right of the president. It is the president that select and also appoint anyone based on the constitution. Therefore, when there are maybe so many, let's say, limited number of Muhammadiyah, or maybe only one single person from Muhammadiyah that was appointed by President Jokowi as the minister, Muhammadiyah also see this as part of the political reality and part of the prerogative right of the president. There is no objection from Muhammadiyah in this decision. Second, of course, for Muhammadiyah, when Pak Alex raised the issue on the HIP, or Haluan Ideologi Pancasila bill, that Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama strongly oppose this bill, it is not because of this kind of, let's say, president decision dealing with the cabinet and so on and so forth, but Muhammadiyah commitment to Pancasila as the state ideology. Because Muhammadiyah has explicitly declared in its last Muktamar in Makassar that Indonesia, according to Muhammadiyah, is Darul Ahdi wa Shahada. And it is actually a very strategic position and also a very strong theological position of Muhammadiyah's support to Pancasila. So it has nothing to do with the leadership of President Jokowi, but rather Muhammadiyah consistency to defend Pancasila as the state ideology, because Muhammadiyah understand from the procedures and also from the content of the Haluan Ideologi Pancasila bill that are problematic, contradictory with the Pancasila itself, and also contradictory with the 1945 Constitution, and also there are also contradiction with Act number 12, 2011 on the formation of constitution or formation of law or act in Indonesia. Therefore, the problem is not because of the President Jokowi leadership, but it's actually more related to the problem of HIP bills, especially its contradiction with Pancasila and 1945 Constitution. And similar things also happen with regard to the last case on the omnibus law of job creation atau omnibus tentang cipta kerja, that Muhammadiyah since the very beginning remind the government and Indonesian parliament to postpone the process of this omnibus that are actually very, very problematic from its content, and also receive less participation from the people, because Indonesia now still facing a very serious problem with COVID-19 pandemic, and people actually, including Muhammadiyah, concentrate more on the eradication of this pandemic, struggling for the service of the people to survive from this deadly virus. It is not the right time to discuss and to propose this bill, but again, government still continue. And as Pak Alex already mentioned in our non-formal conversation prior to the meeting, it is very reasonable and it's very understandable when people actually protested against this kind of undang-undang cipta kerja. So again, Muhammadiyah actually more focused on the content of the bill and not relate to the leadership of the president. So it is actually not on the indicator of Muhammadiyah rebellion or opposition to the government, but Muhammadiyah concern with the importance of defending constitution and also the importance of government consistency to implement the law or the positive law in Indonesia. And similarly, with regard to the weakening of Indonesian Corruption Act, for example, or Mahkamah Konstitusi, and also, sorry, Mahkamah Konstitusi, what we call Judicial Court, and also the KPK, Anti-Corruption Commission. The Muhammadiyah actually very concerned with the issue of good governance and green government. And it is in this context, for example, when Muhammadiyah also concerned with the implementation or the organization of pemilu kada during the COVID, because Muhammadiyah actually also concerned with the quality of the election, the quality of democracy, because for Muhammadiyah, democracy is not merely a political system, but it is also a value and a culture that consists on the importance of meritocracy, on the importance of egalitarianism, and of course, transparency that is part of good governance and clean government. Muhammadiyah see that the pemilu kada that will be organized in the next December is actually simply a procedural democracy and a formalistic election that quite possibly and potentially might be problematic because let's say the potential, the very likely money politic will be part of the election, and it is actually also problematic when it comes to the result of the election. It is in this context as well when Muhammadiyah is very concerned with the ongoing or maybe the presence of so-called the conservatism, because Muhammadiyah, when it comes to democracy, when it comes to bringing moderate Islam to the center of Indonesian public life, then Muhammadiyah, of course, promote tolerant Islam and accept plurality, and to some extent also promote on the importance of pluralism as part of the essential values for a pluralistic society in Indonesia. Therefore, relationship between Muhammadiyah with the second term of President Jokowi and also his first term, I think will remain the same. Muhammadiyah focus more on the policy of the government rather than who is actually appointed as ministers or maybe the president itself or the president himself. It is actually part of the commitment of Muhammadiyah to strengthening civil society, and Muhammadiyah, of course, actively involved in the public discourse and participation to any state matters, because one of the indicators of a good and healthy democracy is public participation in so many public life. I think I have to stop here, Pak Alex, before you reminding me that I'll use 15 minutes for my time allocation. Thank you very much.
Okay, terima kasih Pak Mukti, and thank you for being able to honor the time. So finally, our third and final speaker of the day is Dr. Edmund Landy, who is currently a lecturer in the Graduate School of Universitas Nasional Jakarta, and Dr. Lanti has a distinguished career. He obtained his PhD in political science from University of British Columbia in Canada, and he worked in various capacities previously with the United Nations Development Program or UNDP of Indonesia office, and he was a former executive director of the TIFA Foundation, a philanthropic organization promoting democracy and human rights in Indonesia. Dr. Landy also served as a visiting fellow with the RSIS Indonesia program from March to April 2019. And today he will speak on the problem of conservative Islamist organizations in Indonesia and their mobilization campaign against President Jokowi during his second term. Pak Irman, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Alex. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Unlike Prof. Mukti and Gus Yahya, whose ilmu ma'rifat is a lot higher than me, I would like to be guided by a PowerPoint presentation. So I will share my PowerPoint presentation, Alex.
Okay, can Pak.
Okay. Is this okay?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to start. Hopefully, I can finish before 15 minutes of allocated time. So I would like to start my presentation with a reflection of what 2019 or last year's election is all about. A lot of people are still, even nowadays, are still actually trying to analyze the results of the election. And so there are basically two main takeouts, coming out of that. First is that a lot of people are saying that this is the loss of an Islamist, Prabowo being affiliated with the Islamist camp. And some people will also like to see that there are some resemblance, uncanny resemblance between the results of last year's election and the results of our first free and fair elections in 1955. Well, basically, we saw, Jokowi got reelected. President Jokowi got reelected with slightly higher margins from 2014 elections. This is, some people found it a little bit of a surprise because then, some people were actually thinking that Jokowi might have lost the election, but he ended up actually got reelected with a higher margin. But there are some nuances that we can see, from this election result. First is that Jokowi has got a big, victory in Central and East Java. I mean, the homeland of nationalists and traditionalist Muslims followers. And so we can see that this is that the election was a reaction from the Islamists, from the nationalists and traditionalists towards a rising of Islamism. But we would also have to see that actually Prabowo received higher margins in Sumatra and West Java and South Sulawesi, for instance. These are provinces where Masyumi actually won in 1955. So in result, we have a similar voting pattern with 1955 election. Jokowi, a nationalist candidate, won in areas where PNI and NU received the largest votes, and Prabowo won where Masyumi actually won. Okay, so so my point is that while we see differences from 1955 to what it is now, Islamism is not a fad. Islamism is a permanent feature of Indonesian politics, as nationalism and Islamic traditionalism are. Okay. Basically, my point. So we can repress, we can actually buy them off, we can actually try to do a lot of things to actually wipe them out and everything, but it will not erase Islamism in Indonesia. Okay, it will not erase Islamic conservatism in Indonesia. At the same time, we have seen a lot of new movements coming up. I mean, I was like in my previous article that I published with RSIS, we called it new Dawah movement. These are the Salafi, Wahhabi, Tarbiyah, Jemaah Tabligh, Pemuda Hijrah, and all of right. This indicates that there is a rising Islamism among the middle class, which previously had been secular. So we see this rise of movement. So the question now is that is there an increased support for Islamism in the future? That's the number one question that we should actually address. Okay. So I would like to then move the presentation to kami. Kami is the buzzword nowadays in Indonesian news media, social media, and everything like that. Okay, so it was declared. Kami is an action coalition to save Indonesia, Koalisi Aksi Menyelamatkan Indonesia. It was declared a day after the celebration of the national independence in 18th of August of this year by a number of figures linked to some Islamist groups, alumni 212, Front Pembela Islam, and a number of TNI retirees, including most significantly, of course, General Gatot Nurmantio, the former TNI chief. And it was also supported by a number of people from the mainstream Islamic organizations, most prominently, of course, Padin Samsudin from Muhammadiyah, but also a number of PIs from NU as well. So it is basically trying to portray itself as a rainbow organization. I mean, it's like with a very strong Islamist flavor. It is from the beginning. It was very clear that Kami has vowed itself as Jokowi's opposition. Okay, so from the Islamist group, who I mean, after Prabowo's decision to join Jokowi's cabinet, it was considered as homeless. It doesn't have a home. It used to have a home within Prabowo's campaign, within Gerindra and everything. But now, after Prabowo's decision to actually join Jokowi's cabinet and became a loyalist in that sense and everything, they were considered as homeless, and they found themselves a new home in Kami. So the recent demonstration against the Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja Omnibus Law, it's basically a statement of Kami coming out. So this is Kami. We are out there supporting demonstrations and everything like that. This is our clear message to Jokowi's administration that we will become your opposition. However, at this point in time, it's still unclear if Kami will then transform into a political party contesting the next election. And even if it does, whether it will receive sufficient support from the Islamist voters, it tries to portray itself as Islamist, but whether it will receive support from the Islamist movement, it's still unclear at this point in time. Now, I would like to see what happens, with the political parties after the results of the last election was announced. As we know, Prabowo jumped the fence, and then that gave Gerindra some kind of difficulties to actually maintain its base. Okay? So basically, Gerindra, if I may say, is probably the party that gained the most by leaning towards the Islamists during the 2019 election. And at the national level, it has increased its seat in the national parliament. It has also come second in terms of popular votes for national parliament elections, behind after PDIP. Okay. And more prominently in local parliaments where Prabowo won presidential election, Gerindra has got a lot of achievements. I mean a lot of addition of seats. In West Java provincial parliament, say for instance, it has more than doubled its share of seats from 11 to 25. So the observation, the initial and casual as it is, has suggested that Prabowo's decision to join Jokowi's cabinet has decreased Islamic support for Prabowo and for Gerindra. In some areas, it is big time. It is big time. I mean, a lot of people, for instance, in West Java, where I did most of my research, says that we're not going to support Prabowo and Gerindra anymore. Out with that. Okay, so we will probably see a deflation of the Gerindra support in the 2024 election, unless it regains its.
Pak Irman, you have 5 more minutes.
Okay, I will be quick, but so
okay, thank you.
Okay, PKS at the same time has also increased the seat in national parliament from 40 to 50, as well as many local elections as well. In West Java, for instance, it was 12 in 2014 to 21 in last election. Their interest is jumping, that PKS will become party of choice for Islamic voters. It is likely. So if we don't see any advance of any strong Islamist parties, and I have my doubts that Kami will become that, PKS will probably have the chance of becoming a top 5 party in the national elections. Right now it's number 7 or number 8. Some people, you know, I'm not even surprised if it becomes big 3 as well. So can I just skip this because I think
okay, can Pak.
yeah, okay. So I would just go to the security implications. I think we have seen continued repression of dissent by the government during the omnibus law process and everything. You know, I mean, it's like activists rounding up and everything like that. It will probably result in the return of temporary stability, of a facade in that one. You know, I mean, it's like cosmetically it's stable and everything like that. But it risks a longer term unpopularity, even though Jokowi actually commands a huge majority in the parliament. A number of issues that will increase the unpopularity of the government: dwindling economy, inept handling of COVID-19, undoing of democratic achievement, consolidation of oligarchy with this pilkada and everything, with this local election, with this local election. So I would suggest, no, I would predict that there will be continued opposition by the Islamic, and possibly because a lot of people in the civil society by the omnibus law, possibly a coalition with the civil society. Is there a possibility of loosening of nationalist traditionalist coalition? I think this is for Gus Yahya to address. And but there will certainly be endless street demonstrations caused by various issues. You know, today it's omnibus law, some other issues, you know, later and everything. There is an increased police tough stance, and a lot of opposition to the police role nowadays. You know,
okay, 2 more minutes, Papa.
Okay, remind us to the same stance that we saw during the New Order era about the role of the TNI, and there is a possible tension between TNI and the police, as we see during the handling of the omnibus law administration. So how would we portray the post 2024 Indonesia, where it is a post Jokowi Indonesia? I mean, is there going to be a consolidation of the nationalist traditionalist coalition that we saw in the 2019 election, or is there going to be an emerging new coalition pattern coming up? I think those are the questions for us to discuss, Alex. Or I mean, okay, this can become a research agenda for the next few years and everything, because this is still 4 years away from 2024 election. So I end my presentation there, Alex. Thank you very much. Hopefully, it's not past 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. We are right out of time, but thank you so much. And we'll actually have some extra minute. So we actually about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. So while we're waiting for more questions from our audience, and I encourage you to ask as much questions as possible. While we're waiting for more questions, let me use my moderator's privilege to ask the first series of questions for each of the speakers. The first question is for Pak Mukti and Gus Yahya. What do you think is the position? What are the positions of Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah with regard to the ongoing COVID-19 situation in Indonesia. How do you think the government has handled the pandemic so far? That's the first question. And then that's the second question I want to direct to Gus Yahya. You mentioned in your presentation that the idea to promote tolerance has become embedded within NU, especially after Gus Dur. How do you could you measure this? How do this tolerance has become embedded within Nahdlatul Ulama? And can you provide some examples on how could we measure the tolerance, increasing tolerance within your organization? Okay, that's all for me. So maybe Gus Yahya and Mas Mukti can answer the first question first. Oke, silakan Pak.
We follow the order, Gus Yahya first.
Oke.
Sorry. With regard to the COVID-19 situation, I think, well, NU actually, we've been doing whatever we can, to help the people, not just NU people in general. And with whatever resource that is in our hands and whatever capability that we have. With regards to the government response, well, the way I see it, personally, the government is not really coherent in its response to the situation. I don't know what's the problem there. And it will need another broad discussion about how the government is responding to the situation. Now, with regard to the tolerance, see, I said that the idea of tolerance is already taken by NU people as a symbolic element of its communal identity. But this is still something that is abstract. Something is that not definite in detail. We just have this perception about the need to be more tolerant, but what is tolerant? What should we express our tolerance to others? So that's why we come to conclusion that we need to address honestly and directly to the source of these problems. That's why then we raise the discourse on problematic tenets within Islamic teachings and orthodoxy. Because this is the things, the issues that not just Indonesia need, actually the global civilization need it. Because we need a global civilization where Islam's and the whole 1 billion plus Muslim community in the world are integrated harmoniously with the rest of the world. If not, then we're having a big problem. And as long as this idea of differentiating the status, differentiating the rights with a category of Muslim and non-Muslim, we'll have this problem remain. So that is what we do. And actually, this problem lays or exist in various levels of society. We dealt with the problem in the level of discourse, with the rulings that I just mentioned in our last national conventions as ulamas regarding the status of non-Muslim, the category of non-Muslim and so forth. But we still need to work with a strategy to transform the mindset of the people, because the mindset of the people remains the old mindset, still there. That's why, for example, we have this very horrible tragedy with Shiite community in Sampang, conflicting with NU community there. So as you see, we have this idea of tolerance. There are NU people who were not, absolutely not tolerant to the Shiite community. So what do we have to deal with this? What is the source of that intolerance? This is something that we look in the deepest way we can. And then we found out that it's rooted in the idea of the differentiation between Muslim and non-Muslim. What is Islam and what is not Islam, and how to deal with these differences. Why NU people in Sampang were attacking the Shiite community? It's because Shiite is considered to be beyond Islam, not Islam anymore, and eligible to condemnation and so forth, and attack. So while the reality is that, the fact is that we cannot deny differences that exist in our society. Now we have to figure out how to deal with it. And there is no other option than developing more and more tolerance attitude among the people. So we dealt with the root in the religious discourse, and then we are now working on a strategy to transform the people's mindset. That's why we have this campaign of Islam Nusantara, for example. Actually, Islam Nusantara is an articulation which is complex in nature. And one of the very important elements of the idea of Islam Nusantara is to claim our own religious authority, that we have our own religious authority to take position in religious issues, that we are, we are not dependent to Islamic authorities elsewhere, like in the Middle East. So this is something that we are now doing. We honestly acknowledge the problems that remains, that we still have, but we are working also persistently to find the solution for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Gus Yahya. And then now we turn to Pak Mukti.
Thank you, Pak Alex. I think if I can comment on how government deal with the problems of COVID-19 pandemic, there might be two evaluation. One is too slow, second is disorganized. And this results in disappointment of people, and it also reflect on the quality of Jokowi administration. So I think it is in this relation then, as a civil society, of course, Muhammadiyah does not expect too much to the government performance, but rather we do our responsibility as an Islamic organization and also a philanthropic Islamic organization to do what we can for the people. And I think we are lucky to have so many partners, including some of our partners from Singapore that actually also work with us. Temasek has been one of our partners in doing these programs to overcome and also to deliver our service for the victims and also for the people at large. The second one, there are actually some question that is mentioned in the Q&A, Pak Alec, and I just respond from that.
Yeah, Baba. Maybe you can answer Pak James Dorsey's questions first.
Yeah, there are some questions that directly sent to me. The first, of course, question related to how Muhammadiyah respond to Omnibus Law Cipta Kerja. And I think we have mentioned in many media statement that I think the most visible one is, of course, bringing the issue to Mahkamah Konstitusi, to judicial review in judicial court. Although some people actually questioning about the independence of Mahkamah Konstitusi or judicial court because of the new law of Mahkamah Konstitusi and some of the statement of President Jokowi in front of the members of Mahkamah Konstitusi for the Omnibus Law. But this is actually the one that is most visible and peaceful compared to peraturan pemerintah pengganti undang-undang, which is very unlikely because this bill is actually proposed by the government, and also it is not the expertise of Muhammadiyah to have a street demonstration. Therefore, the most likely is judicial review. But Muhammadiyah actually has an idea whether there is possibility for the government to postpone the implementation of Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja as Indonesia experienced some of the bill that already passed by Indonesian Parliament postpone its implementation. For example, with regard to Undang-Undang Guru dan Dosen and then Undang-Undang Halal and some other laws in Indonesia are postponed the implementation because of the inadequate preparation and also the strong opposition from the people. But again, it's actually part of our attempt and our aspiration toward the government. Tomorrow, this is actually the hot news. I think I mentioned in our meeting that tomorrow morning, Muhammadiyah will have meeting with President Jokowi on the issue of Omnibus Law, and we want to see how the government respond to Muhammadiyah and also how Muhammadiyah actually also propose this kind of possibility for postponing the implementation of Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja. This is the issue with Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja. And second, with regard to the presentation of Gus Yahya on the problem of the implementation or the interpretation of Islamic tenets, I think some of the issues that relate to the rising or maybe the development of so-called conservatism to some extent actually relate to the interpretation of Islamic text. And when we discuss about Islamic moderation in Indonesia, when we discuss about this, and we have to deal with at least three issues. The first is the understanding of Islam itself, and we need to have interpretation and reinterpretation of the interpretation. So this is the one that we need to do at the level of cognition or maybe the level of understanding of Islamic teaching. The second is the moderate in terms of our attitude. So Gus Yahya already mentioned about how NU actually working very hard to promote Islamic moderation within NU, and I think the theology within NU with tawazun, and some of the concept of moderate Islam is actually already there. But Gus Yahya mentioned about the behavior of certain group of Nahdlatul Ulama in Madura that are not actually reflecting the teaching of tolerant and moderate Islam within NU itself. And this, to some extent, might also exist within Muhammadiyah, with the existence of so-called the one that's actually now becoming more popular is the term Mursal. Mursal is Muhammadiyah Rasa Salafi. That is Muhammadiyah that is close to Salafi. So the term is called Mursal. Previously, we have Marmut, Marhanis Muhammadiyah, this Muhammadiyah that is close to PDIP, and also Munu Muhammadiyah that's still practicing the tradition of NU. And the third is what we call the moderation in the government policy. I think so, there are so many policies that need to be very fairly managed, and it doesn't need to be 100% balanced, but we need to have more fair and accommodative, and the importance of sharing within the democratic society. This is my response to that question, and so many questions actually directly to Dr. Irman. And I think these only two questions that directly addressed to me.
Okay, thank you, Pak Mukti. Yeah, I think I will hand the floor to Pak Irman. I think Pak Irman, if you can answer the question asked by Pak Nadil from Universitas Gajah Mada, as well as the question by Karus Asman from the Singapore Embassy in Jakarta. Maybe you can try answering them both simultaneously. Thank you.
Okay, can I see in the list, Alex? I mean,
okay. Pak
list,
Nadil I think on the Pak Nadil is the third question on the list.
Right. No, I mean, I would like to answer a question by Christian Bachheimer first from.
Oh, okay, Ken. Up to you, Pak.
Because this is about the military. Because since Pa Mukti and I was probably the only one from the panelists that touch on the issue of military police and everything.
Yeah.
So,
okay, go ahead, Pa.
Yeah. So the question about the military, I think the TNI nowadays is a bit different from TNI in the past. Are there factions in the TNI? Yes, of course. There remains factions in the TNI, but it's a green and red and white factions, as we see in the last days of the new order of the Suharto era. I think it's slightly different. It's slightly different now. I think it is more of an issue of opportunism. The way that I see it is like this. Most of the serving officers were loyal to the civilian, leadership, to the civilian supremacy, leadership, but became very politically motivated once they retired. We see this in the form of not Mantio, but also most of the former TNI chiefs are engaged in politics. Muldoko, who's the name, the former TNI chief from the Air Force, Joko
Santoso, I think,
and Joko Santoso as well, and everything. So there are many things that is happening with the retirees. Okay, so it's very important to see, to observe or to study the phenomenon of the retirees, perhaps, than the serving TNI officers who will remain loyal in the position. Okay, now my point about a possibility of a split or some sort of clash between the military and the police is like this. Okay, I mean. Nowadays, it is very clear that there is a huge envy among the TNI about the role of the police. If in the past the police can still be quote unquote controlled by the TNI, nowadays it has assumed a life of its own. And this is something that I don't think many in the TNI appreciate. Okay, nowadays we have a leadership of the TNI that is, that is 100% loyal or forced to be loyal. okay? But we wouldn't know what will happen when the next generation of the army leadership comes up. Okay? So this is a, I mean, it's like a potential for a conflict in the future is actually quite big between the TNI and the police, and we need to observe this almost on a daily basis, I think. Okay. So the second question is about, I think the efforts to, I think Pa Yahya and Gus Yahya and Prof Muti can also answer this and everything. I mean, what they think about, at the promotion of moderate Islam and repressive action against the Islamists, whether this will really constrain the role of the Islamists in the future in Indonesia, or this will actually, at best put them underground so they can actually come up later, or they can actually be on the offensive, later in the future. We don't know this, but I would say that from my own research and everything, that the more that you suppress these groups, the stronger their messages are. The stronger the messages are. I think it's a completely wrong strategy to actually suppress these groups and everything, rather than engage them in dialogue that NU and Muhammadiyah are actually engaging on and everything. But if you unleash the police to actually hunt these people down, wow! I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, which we will reap the results in about a year or two from now.
Maybe I think there is also from Pak Khairul Asman. Yeah, on PA 212, Pak.
Oh, on the PA 212. Yeah, I mean, it's like, of course, I mean, that news media, the Hustling that you mentioned, Pa Khairul, I mean, it was 2 days after the launch, or basically a day after the declaration. I mean, but we know exactly from the demonstration on omnibus law, it is not only PA 212 that actually, went down to the streets. FBI actually went big time on the streets, and as you know, I mean, a lot of these demonstrations are driven by the same people that drove the demonstrations against the results of the election. That we saw a lot of riots in Jakarta after the announcement of the results by the KPU, by the General Elections Commission. These are the same people, the same mode, the same MO as well, and everything. So I think nowadays Kami is probably a unifying force among the Islamists that everyone can actually rally into. Of course, the PA 212 don't want to lose, its credibility by outwardly, declaring to join Kami and everything, which will actually, be a little bit confusing for that matter. But I believe that Kami will be the means that the Islamists will actually be unified around and everything, in order for the purpose of the elections against of the opposition against the Jokowi administration. So it doesn't matter what they say and everything, they're there basically. Okay. So can I answer one more question, Pa Alex? From Morgan.
Yes.
What are the trajectories of Indonesian Islam and their impacts on Indonesia's political economy? Actually, it is not very clear what the Islamists think about the Indonesia's political economy. But one thing is certainly is clear. One thing is evident. The Islamists are against Indonesian overture towards Chinese investment. This is a big time. I mean, even a lot of petitions from the Islamic side against the omnibus law were actually revolving around this issue of Chinese investment. Right? And by Chinese investment, they were also trying to actually go against the, first of all, of course, the business oligarchy and the political oligarchy as well, but at the same time, also the state capitalism. The role of the state-owned agencies in all the infrastructure development in Indonesia. Whether or not the Islamists have views on this and everything, it's not very clear. But what is clear is that their opposition against this type of state capitalism as well as the control of the economy by the oligarchy with the link with the Chinese investments in Indonesia. I think I'm there, Pa Alex.
Okay, thank you, Pa Irman. I think let us turn to some of the other questions. Maybe we can answer the question by Pa Iman Haris. How do NU and Muhammadiyah maintain their consistency as part of the civil society and not the political society? And combined to that, let me see. I think we can also answer the question from my colleagues, Jonathan Chan. Do you think that the stance taken by moderate groups to encourage greater diversity and tolerance in Indonesia by the Jokowi administration had led to a situation termed repressive pluralism? Maybe we can turn to, once again, we can turn to Gus Yahya first, and then Pak Mukti, and then Pak Irman, if you have any comments. Gus Yahya, silakan.
Thank you. First, I would address the second question first, okay?
Okay, can, Pak.
Also related to my idea of additional, points for Pa Irman's ideas. See, the conservatism and the radicalism actually in its appearance in public is inseparable from politics. It will appear strong when it is empowered by political interest and poured with resources from political players. This is the thing. That's why we have raising expression of conservatism after the reformasi is because the political system is getting more open, and Muslims as the base as a vote base is so huge that it's so tempted to use Islam as a political weapon to mobilize support from the people. That's one thing. Second thing, see, if you are a conservative, if you are you intend to have a total implementation of the orthodoxy of Islam, you would want to bring down the whole system. You would want to bring down the nation. That's the thing. Because according to the orthodoxy, this modern nation state is simply something wrong. It's the wrong thing. It's not Islamic. That's what is the ultimate goal of these various strains of conservative movement. such as the Al-Qaeda, the Salafi, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir, and so forth, which is to have alternative system. That's the thing. So that's why we believe that we need to deal with the very source of the problem, which is the religious discourse itself. And then we need to work with a strategy to transform the mindset of the people. And we need to do it in a global manner, because this problem is not exclusive to Indonesia. It is a global problem. That's the fact. Now, related to NU's position as a non-political organization, okay, we already stated, we made a statement actually, that we are withdrawing from the politics and become a more purely social organization. But that is the statement. The reality is not necessarily fully, reflecting that statement, because we have an organization construct that is still heavily colored with political habits that we have since 1952. So what we need now with NU is to have a strategy to transform the organizational construct also, to be more away from, political direct involvement in practices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gus Yahya. Pak Mukti. Pak Mukti, silakan ya.
Unmute, yeah. Sorry. The term political society is interesting because someone mentioned about civil society and political society, and it's actually maybe very uniquely Indonesian. But this is actually a real situation as a consequence of the weakening roles of political parties. People actually very strongly question on the roles of political parties, I think, as the political control to the government. But I think for Muhammadiyah, actually, we are consistently perform and also doing so many things that relate to our position as civil society. The first, of course, Muhammadiyah tend to always neutral to any political parties. We have no official relationship with any political parties in Indonesia. And this is the thing that is actually very hard to maintain. The second, we actually also consistent with the promotion of peaceful Islam and peaceful response to any policies or to any situation following the institution within the state system. This is actually, of course, becoming very challenging now, since so many issues that happen within Indonesian context now is actually so-called being politicized. Therefore, Muhammadiyah actually working very hard to always standing its position as a civil society by promoting so many ideas within state affairs through what we call as opinion maker. So we try to propose and aspire any idea dealing with the reform and also to the performance of the government. The second, we try to do what we call as political lobby. And again, this political lobby is the thing that actually already implemented since the leadership of Yahya Fakhruddin, the leader of Muhammadiyah since 1968 to 1990s. And it is the one that current leadership of Muhammadiyah, Professor Haidar Nasir, actually, let's say, prefer to have this kind of political lobby rather than political megaphone diplomacy. Because I think with the characteristic of President Jokowi as a Japanese and a leader that implement a Japanese nuance, political lobby through communication seems to be more effective than making so many public statements. And of course, to some extent, we might do what we call a political pressure by making so many judicial review on laws or acts that are contradictory with the 1945 Constitution. And again, this is actually the situation where, again, some societies, including maybe Pak Irman can discuss this more, becoming more political than political parties. So the PA 212 or maybe Kami and some other political, some other maybe social movement, there actually seems to be more political than political parties themselves. And when we discuss this in relation to democracy, it's actually the situation that we need to reform, and political parties need to speak up in so many issues as part of their position as representation of the people. I think this is the only one that I can respond. The other questions already addressed by Gus Yahya, and some other question might be addressed by Dr. Irman. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Pak Mufti. Okay, we're going to try to answer the last few questions in the next 5 minutes or so. So let's see. Let's take the questions by Prof. Leonard Sebastian, and then by Chong Wu Ling, and then by Jonathan Chan, because I think they are all related regarding the issue of deepening polarization in Indonesian society, as well as increasing, repressive pluralism, or as well, or maybe, by other scholars also call it the new authoritarianism in Indonesia. Maybe for answering this question, let's go to Pak Irman first.
Okay, thank you, Mas Alex. I think there are, in my view, there are some questions that Prof. Mufti and Gus Yahya can answer, because there are some skepticism about the role of NU and Muhammadiyah in the future and everything.
Okay,
especially in the face of the onslaught of a growing tenacity of the Islamism in Indonesia. How are they keeping the base and everything? But I would like to actually answer about the last comment made by Prof. Mufti about politics in Indonesia. I think he is completely right that in Indonesia, I think what we are looking at is that we are looking at two phases of politics in Indonesia, and this became very, very clear during the passing or during the enactment of the omnibus law. First phase is that we see the formal phase. We see the formal phase. We see the constitutional phase, in which there is a functioning parliament. There is an election. There are political parties, and there is a parliament that is functioning. But the question is that whether or not this formal structure actually produces results that is in line with what the majority of the people actually think is something that is probably there is a disconnect there. There's a disconnect. because the way that I see it is that a lot of segments of the population are actually against some parts of the omnibus law. Okay, but no one actually voiced this type of concerns in the formal system. So that's why, I mean, in addition, of course, traditionally, NU and Muhammadiyah, that has also linked to the political parties that are sitting in the parliament. Indonesia will always have this kind of rogue elements of new organizations that are coming up. If we see PA 212, if we see FPI, if we see HTI, if we see now Kami and everything like that, they are not represented at the political screen, or at least the connections are not very clear between the formal political movements and the grassroots. Now, if we allow this to actually continue, we will see a lot of elements of instability that is not linked to any democratic values, because in democracy, actually this type of things is dampened. I mean, this type of aspiration is dampened because you have a working conveyor belt between the society and the political parties. In Indonesia, this is not functioning. That is something that we need to address. Thank you, Pak Alex.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak Irman. Okay, in the interest of the time, can Gus Yahya and Pak Mukti answer the final two questions? Like the first question is, what's your take in the perception of the rise of groups like PA 212 and FBI? Is this a sign of dissatisfaction against Muhammadiyah and NU? And the last question is from Pak Hakim from Universitas Pajajaran. Do NU and Muhammadiyah consider Salafis as dakwah partners or as threats? And then the second question for Pak Irman, does the presence of the new dakwah movement in Indonesia show the declining influence of NU and Muhammadiyah, and why? So Gus Yahya, maybe you can answer these questions first. Gus Yahya, silakan.
Okay, dissatisfaction toward NU and Muhammadiyah may be one factor, but there is also another factor, which is the interest of the political actors to weaponize Islam, to gain political support. You see, Prabowo is not an Islamist, no way he is an Islamist, but somehow he decided to take Islam as a political weapon to mobilize support behind him in the last presidential election. So polarization and so forth, it's driven by political actors based on pragmatic interest to gain political support. That's one thing. Second thing, there are two kind of conservative movement or radicalism. One is the pragmatic one, such as the FPI and PA 212. It's a pragmatic one. Their aim is just the local political, gains. But there is another kind which is more transnational. The movement related to Hizb ut-Tahrir and Muslim Brotherhood and so forth. It's internationally networked. It is global in manner. So we need to deal with this second strain of conservative movement, again, in a global manner. Two, the Wahhabism and Salafism pose a threat to NU and Muhammadiyah and the moderate Islam. Well, if you bring the idea of Salafism and Wahhabism into politics, then you will threaten the integrity of the political system, because you would want to bring down the system and replace it with another one, which is the caliphate. So, but in terms of the dialogue over the religious discourse, we're okay with everything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Gus Yahya. Pak Mukti.
Yeah, Salafi is neither partner nor threat for Muhammadiyah. I think we can see this as a newcomer and not yet a competitor for us. So we are too big to fail, actually. But of course, we do not undermine the development of this, not because of their number, but because of the, let's say, a very so-called provocative statement and also some extreme behavior that could, to some extent, affect and lead to what we call the disharmony among religious organizations, both intern Islamic organization and also among religious organizations. So we are concerned with the existence of this group, not in relation to the position with Muhammadiyah, but in relation to their action with the harmony of the society at large. Thank you, Pak Alex.
Okay, thank you, Pak Mukti. Pak Irman, do you have any last thought for us in trying to answer some of these questions?
Very shortly, perhaps, Pak Alex, that I don't think, let me make this very clear, I don't think there are any groups, any Islamic groups in Indonesia that can actually match NU and Muhammadiyah, or can actually take its place, take their places. I think NU and Muhammadiyah are one of a kind. Even in the Islamic world, it was they are all recognized as one of a kind and everything. I mean, it's like we will have no organization that can actually match that. I mean, in the Indonesian context. That said, I think the encroachment of the new Da'wah movement, and I mentioned just a few, I mean, Salafi, Wahhabi, Tabligh, Jemaah Pemuda Hijrah, and a number of, Tarbiyah and everything, are real. I mean, this is not something that we should actually dismiss, saying that they're, they're just fringes, they're just minorities and everything like that. They can become minorities, but it's like, and they are actually minorities. I would actually add, but their significance have been growing. I mean, it's like, perhaps in early 2000 when we were into Reformasi, we heard of nothing of these sort of organizations. Now, in the span of less than one generation, in a decade or 2 decades and everything like that, we are already concerned about that. So what is this? What is this phenomenon? I would say that we need to study this further, but at the same time, I think we shouldn't be dismissive of these movements, and we shouldn't actually repress them. I agree with Gus Yahya that we need to actually engage them in dialogue and everything like that. I mean, in terms of politics, let politics be politics. But my concern is that what is going to happen in the society. I think the same point also mentioned by Prof. Muti and everything like that. I mean, the polarization is exactly not happening at the political sphere. It is happening mostly at the societal sphere. And that is something that we need to actually be mindful about, Alex. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Pak Irman. These are very insightful notes for us to think about as we conclude our webinar today. So I want to extend our thanks from RSIS for all the 3 speakers, Gus Yahya, Pak Mukti, and Pak Irman, for being with us for the past 90 minutes in this webinar. I want to thank all of our participants and those of us, especially those of you who are asking us questions. I want to apologize if some of the answers are not satisfactory to you. And thank you all again for coming to this RSIS webinar on Islamic civil society in Indonesia during Jokowi's second term. And we hope to see all of you again in the next RSIS webinar in the near future. So thank you, and have a good afternoon.